Steins has its share of fame. Often touted as one of the greatest visual novels to ever exist, the game also has an anime adaptation that ranks among some of the most acclaimed in history. Originally released for Japan on the Xbox 360 in 2009, the romp through time and space saw future releases on most mobile platforms, PlayStation 3, PSP, and Vita over the course of the next 5 years. The anime adaptation drove the formation of a significant fan base westward, and the PC, PS3, and Vita versions found localization in North America in 2014 and 2015. Today, visually at least, we'll be looking at the Vita version. Functionally, most of them are all the same. Developed by Nitro Plus and 5PB, Steins is an entry into Nitro Plus's scientific adventure series, which is made up of well-received, loosely connected stories, often most notably identified by the use of a semicolon between two words. Steins itself is the series' take on time travel in a contemporary setting. Steins is often one of those games ranked among the best in its genre, the visual novel. Emotional, complex, and implementing unique takes on the genre's mechanics, the game is considered a classic throughout fans and critics alike. Today, we begin Operation Yggdrasil. Mission: see if Steins lives up to the hype. Alternative objective: see if the game holds up to those who've already experienced the story via the anime already, like, well, myself. Operation Stotto El Sai Konglu. Steins is a visual novel played on your phone. No, it's not only on mobile platforms. No, you don't have to get this for a mobile system even if you could. No, you don't have to use your phone as a controller, though that'd be pretty cool in this case. What I speak of is the phone trigger system. Often visual novels center their mechanics around a choice system that embarks the player through a tree of potential story routes before sending them on a climactic note with an ending. Some use this as a branching method of unlocking the true end, or they explore various characters in depth depending on your choices. The standard interaction for these choices is typically picking between several options at points in the story, or a themed choice between paths like doors or how to vote. Steins does none of this. Instead, it offers a dedicated button to whip out your phone and send text messages and occasionally call others. Not one traditional choice is offered throughout the game. Everything you do is dependent on how you use that phone. This is not to imply the game allows you to simply use your phone however you please. If it pulls you towards your phone when opportunities are made available, you may be able to do something. Get a text? Often you have a set of ways to reply to that text. Get called? You can pick up or not. Get a big hint? You could use your phone from the game. Well, you don't have to. Doing nothing is almost always a viable action, and is even required to achieve some of the endings available. With that, we return to the meat of the typical visual novel mechanic, the choice system. Typically, in choice-based visual novels, the endings are a platter of potentially bad or hopeful endings that speak to the overall story as a whole. Based on the choices made by the player via the phone trigger system, the story can turn into dead ends or completely new possibilities as the player moves their mad scientist into the future. But as interesting as the phone trigger system is conceptually and everything, it can sometimes feel like a bit of a lost opportunity. Many times the replies you send as a text, which is the biggest aspect of its usage, can become a guessing game on which will quickly become a dead end and not even get you a reply, or which will benefit your journey, or get you more collectibles, or open up the true end. Adding to that, within the maps of potential conversations you can have are a variety of little bits of extra content. Only the true ending has any dependency on these interactions, and other choices for endings are parts of a different, less developed part of the phone trigger system. This isn't to say that it's bad because of it. It's always fun to get a new text mid-conversation and whip out your phone, have a quick back and forth with one of the cast members. In fact, it's actually one of the biggest charms of the game. It's fun, it's interesting, it's a great way to mix up what you'd expect out of the genre, and the system shows its benefits elsewhere by not having as much of a impact on the actual story branches. When a game does so many things right, something like the feeling of wasted potential is going to be the type of thing that will echo the loudest. And ultimately, it's one of the things about the gameplay that stands out most because of all the things it does right. Now, it can be difficult speaking of such a story without venturing into spoiler territory. Steins Gate, with its twists and turns, is no exception to this concern. To say it simply, the plot follows a contemporary setting with college-aged, around late high school students stumbling around a thrilling adventure of time travel and manipulation. I will run down the premise at the end of the section, so no spoilers till then. Exciting, dangerous, personal, and ready to pull on your heartstrings at a moment's notice, Steins Gate succeeds where many fail. As a visual novel, the story acts as the greatest wall between levels of quality. The characters make you want to fight, the plot twists keep you guessing, and the pacing keeps you enthralled from start to finish. As a story, Steins Gate lives up to its reputation as a classic. It grips you from beginning to end using different storytelling techniques as necessary. I won't call it perfect though. The beginning of the game can go slowly as the events are established and the real meat of the story is still off in the horizon somewhere. At this point, the game feels satisfied dangling questions that could either never be answered by the player or seem all too obvious in front of their faces. Generally, the early sections are held up by the exceptional cast of characters. The cast is, from all angles, charming and interesting. The appeal rises exponentially when you factor in the interactions between them. It's easy to see where the tropes that spawn each character come from. Our main character, Okube Rintaro, is a classic case of 8th grade syndrome as he prattles on with his delusions of chaos and power. Mikise Kurisu has a tsundere heart to the core as much as Mayuri Shina is an airhead. The same concept can really be applied to the rest of the cast. We have our resident otaku king, trap character, cat maid girl, unforgiving boss, and more. Where the secrets lie is an extra layer of depth below that. The game isn't afraid to allow you to see through to the trope instantly, but always gives you a regular reminder that there is always more to them. The depth flourishes in, once again, the character interactions. The back and forths between people feel so natural, then it's easy to start thinking of these characters that they are like real, fully developed people themselves. Establishing such dynamics provides flexibility for the story to set its pace as it wishes. With the early parts of the game largely held up by the cast, the plot can hold off on the bulk of the twists and turns for the latter half. With this, the roles of the two decidedly different parts of the story play off each other. Lingering mysteries keeps the player guessing in the early section, and the lovingly established cast makes the dramatic turns of the plot all the more effective. Now, from here on, I will give a brief rundown of the story premise. Spoilers will be held to a minimum, but minor aspects of the game are inevitably spoiled, so this is a last warning. If you want to go in no spoilers whatsoever, feel free to jump to the next section of the review, or just go play it and come back. And here we go. Steins Gate is, as noted, a story of time travel. Playing as a self-proclaimed mad scientist Hoi in Kyoma, Okube Rintaro, aka his real name, establishes a shabby personal laboratory occupied by his childhood friend Mayuri Shina and college friend Itaru Hashida. The Future Gadget Laboratory develops a variety of homemade inventions of ill-fated concepts and questionable reliability. On their 8th gadget, they develop a phone-controlled microwave, but while they test with this, they stumbled upon an odd function. The microwave can refreeze chicken. During the process of investigating this odd function, Okube and Mayuri head off to attend a conference on time travel. After being thrown out for rude behavior, Okube stumbles upon the bloody corpse of an unknown red-headed woman. Panicking, he flees the scene only to text the traumatic experience to Itaru. Suddenly, the world around him changes and the masses spending their day in Akihabara are replaced with a large satellite placed in the side of the building he just left. Confused by the new disparity between his memories of himself and those people around him, he finds himself face to face with Mikise Kurisu, the woman he found dead. The story delves into the mysterious realms of sci-fi of contemporary time travel and creates a world of twists and turns where every step forward could be the last the characters ever make. Presentation happens to actually be one of the game's strongest points, but it doesn't work on a few occasions. In particular, the UI can be hit or miss. Generally, the UI is simplistic with grungy textures scattered throughout. It works when you start to discuss the functionality, the menus, and processes, but often a lot of the information that is put forward can overload the sentences. Essentially, a good example of this would be the tips menu. Some of the placement of information can be hard to take in naturally as you progress, and other examples like the name of the speaking character and dialogue works like this. This probably exemplifies the issue seen in various parts well. More often than not, I had to identify the character solely by their voice. While not the end of the world, it demonstrates a failure of the placement by showing how that placement does not push across the information effectively and naturally. On the other hand, the UI can also break down in the same way in the aesthetics department. For essentially the same reason, the grungy texture can be a distraction to notable information. Looks like it do well to work with the art style of the rest of the game, but when they try to put forth a lot of information, it's not nearly as effective. Complaints like that typically end up being trivial, however. For what clear failures there is a clear goal to match and complement the art style of the game, and that art style, which has a basis in anime style plus enough of a difference in coloring and texture and such to give it a considerably unique identity, is undeniably excellent. While how good it look in motion is in question, it's a bit of a shame that the art style is lost in the anime adaptation. Despite being a standard VN with background character art and a text box over that, Steins manages to feel fresh. It defies its own convention and overcomes what can hold back many of the genre. The art fit the tone of the game perfectly. A combination of the sterility of contemporary styles and a notch of decay seen by the incorporation of unique textures for hair and swirly eyes brings a heart-wrenching story to life. The voice performances assist in that as well. Complemented by a soundtrack varying from decent to iconic, some of the voice performances manage to drive home the pacing of dramatic scenes and cement character personalities well. While the game itself only has Japanese audio, some scenes, particularly important scenes, manage to overcome such language barriers with their impact. Okabe's performance is easily my favorite, though some of the others could grate on the ears, but most of the main cast was handled very well. Lastly, we have the little issue of music. As said, a lot of the tracks can feel sort of basic. Well, not bad technically, but the tracks used for everyday life can often feel generic. The quality is competent, but the blend of technological stylings used thematically does make it better than average. However, dramatic moments where it counts. The soundtrack really steps it up with strong rhythms and technological dissonance. While varying in memorability, the music succeeds at driving home the impact when it needs to, and setting a pace that goes beyond what seems possible for the genre in the first place. Steins offers a unique take on the time-bending stories of past, present, and future. It works at its best when it pulls you in and defies expectations with its blending of characters, setting, mystery, music, interactivity, and presentation. Despite being a visual novel, action scenes feel alive, and the pacing of the text, sounds, and other parts of the presentation is developed excellently to keep you engaged regardless of the format. Even the slow start can become a minor negative with this. To tell such a story involves sacrifice. The impact of choices can be fleeting. While the endings are themed around characters, interactions with them are typically a non-factor. Instead, the game, bar a couple select endings like the true ending, branches off to these endings based off a single one-time choice. Like noted in my discussion on the phone trigger system, the sacrifice to have such a tight story feels like wasted potential, given the combination of the premise and the phone trigger system itself. But wasted potential is still that. Potential. It does not degrade the experience and is clearly how it is in order to help benefit areas elsewhere. Another note of mine is how I originally watched the anime adaptation of the visual novel. Simply put, I still loved it. In fact, I would say the visual novel is better. There's more story content, a more appealing art style, a gameplay mechanic that is lost in the anime, and more. I would suggest waiting to re-experience it though, until the plot becomes vague and partially forgotten. It is a bit of a better experience if you can go into it and start remembering stuff, and you start with that sense of mystery at the beginning. If you know everything going in, I can't really speak to that too well. But really, what Steins does well is, as a visual novel, it brings all these elements together to create such an entertaining experience. It does things so well, but it does things so well in combination with each other to make it much better. Ultimately, the culmination of what Steins does right is seen in how it pulls the player in and captures their attention. Characters back and forth feel natural and make you care for the adventure put in front of you and its result. The unique take on visual novel gameplay mechanics managed to make every action feel like a part of the world instead of an overlay of key points. The plot has enough twists and turns to keep you guessing and never make you want to put it down. All the while, the musical impact and tone help create a pacing that can keep the player engaged well beyond when they actually need to put it down. Even having watched the anime version myself, the pull of the story was irresistible. While I was assisted in having previously experienced it years ago, the story never lost its grip on me even when I remembered what was coming. As great as the anime is, I can easily say the visual novel is even better. Steins Gate is an experience I define as a must-try. What this means is not that everyone will love it, and not that you'll even like it, but it does what it tries to do so well that even those who dislike the genre it's in games like it can often find things to enjoy. Essentially, a must-try is any game that has a high enough quality that I would recommend it to anyone, fostering an interest, if only on the chance they can match the amount of enjoyment I had with it. This is not a guarantee a person will even enjoy it at all. It is an acknowledgement of how high the potential cap for the enjoyment is from my own personal experience, and Steins Gate certainly lives up to its legacy. Now, how about games that you might like if you like the Steins Gate game? Well, some series I've played was that come across the same sort of idea, where you have sort of this, I like to call it a mindfuck adventure, where the story sets you aside and say, hey, this is the reality of it, and then your mind just explodes. And one of those, there are quite a few like that, but one of the ones I like to point out is the Zero Escape series. It originally started on the Nintendo DS with the 999 game, and eventually came to both 3DS and PlayStation Vita with Virtue's Last Reward. 999 is also available on iOS if you're interested in that. And Zero Escape 3, the completion of the trilogy, will be coming out sometime next year, and it was recently announced to everyone's enjoyment. Another game I'd like to suggest is, I haven't played it before, but it's called Chaos Head. It's another from the same series, from the same developer. It's supposed to be a bit on the trippy side, not so much time travel, but it's also supposed to take place in the same universe as Steins Gate. And I've also been really recommended by a friend that has played through it that really liked it. So I'm probably going to tackle that someday, don't know when. It doesn't have an official English localization, unfortunately, not yet. But hopefully it will sometime in the future, and I can tackle that, you can tackle that, and maybe you could tackle it before then. I mean, there are plenty of ways to do that, I suppose. Well, that's all I have. Thank you for sticking around and listening to me ramble. I'm not sure how long this review is going to be this time, hopefully not over 20 minutes. I like these around, like, in the teen minutes, or between 15 and 18 minutes, usually 14, 18, somewhere in that range. Usually I like to put them. It gives me a good amount of time to talk, and it gives me a good amount of time to stuff. And actually, I might be just throwing something on at the end here right now, so enjoy. I enjoy it at the very least. Drive safely.